Hey everyone, this is attorney Veronica McClendon. I'm trying to get my stuff situated, my lighting and everything. Hope y'all can see me. Good afternoon. Good morning. We're still in the morning time. It's not afternoon just yet. So hello everyone. Gonna give everybody a few minutes to get tuned in. Thank you so much for joining this live stream. And we will be getting started in just a minute. It's attorney Veronica McClendon here in Macon, Georgia, on this 29th day of December. This is the fourth day of Kwanzaa. For those of you who do not know, oop, light. Yeah, so it's the fourth day of Kwanzaa, and we are talking about Umoja. No, we are not. We're talking about Ujamaa. Ujamaa, as some people say, which may be the right way. I don't know. I probably need to do like some kind of a Kwanzaa pronunciation class before I do this again because I want to make sure I say the principles correctly, say the names correctly, but I'm gonna do the best I can. Like I've said before, I am not an expert on Kwanzaa. I am learning of my hand. But what I do know, like the back of my hand, pretty much, is heirs property. So what we are doing is talking about Kwanzaa principles. We're talking about heirs property in the context of Kwanzaa principles. So that's what we are doing today. I want to make sure that I give people a chance to come on here with me. Let YouTube tell you that I am logged in, that I'm live, so that y'all can join in on this conversation. And we will be talking about heirs property in the context of the principles of Kwanzaa. As I mentioned, today's principle is Ujamaa. Ujamaa. And I am going to go to my official KwanzaaWebsite.org. As I mentioned before, I don't know who has determined that this is the official Kwanzaa website. I don't know if they still consider it to be the official Kwanzaa website, but the name of the website is officialkwanzaawebsite.org. And they have a list of the Kwanzaa principles. They have a lot of information on there, actually. It's a lot of good, helpful information if you want to learn about Kwanzaa. But I have been using it to find the Nguzo Saba. Again, my Kwanzaa pronunciations, my Swahili pronunciations are not great, but we're going to work on that. But the Nguzo Saba are the seven principles of Kwanzaa. And as I have said before, each day of Kwanzaa this year, 2025, I have been going through one of the principles of Kwanzaa in the context of heirs property. And so today's principle is Ujamaa or Ujamaa. And Ujamaa stands for Cooperative Economics. Cooperative economics means to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses and to profit from them together. So that is the fourth principle of Kwanzaa for this fourth day of Kwanzaa, cooperative economics. And again, my name is attorney Veronica McClendon. I am the owner, the CEO, the managing attorney of McClendon Law and Consulting. My firm is located in Macon, Georgia, and we work with families who have an inherited heirs property, which means that it's family property that's been passed down through the generations. And now we have multiple members, multiple generations perhaps of family members owning an interest in this one piece of property. And I also work with families on estate planning. So we do wills, we do trusts, we do probate. So we help families who have lost a loved one and they need to get the property from that deceased person's estate and transfer it to the family or the individuals who are their heirs. So we help families with that as well. But we are talking about heirs property today. We're talking about heirs property in the context of Kwanzaa. I was doing a presentation on heirs property a couple of days ago, actually on the first day of Kwanzaa, and my mom sent me a message and said, Happy Kwanzaa. And that came through right around the time that I was finishing up my webinar. And when I saw that, I thought, I'm doing a webinar on heirs property, and my mom wished me happy Kwanzaa. Why don't I tie heirs property and Kwanzaa together and talk about heirs property through the context of Kwanzaa principles? So I decided I think my best ideas are those spontaneous, crazy ideas that just come about suddenly. I decided at that moment that I was going to do a series of heirs property talks and that we would focus on one Kwanzaa principle each day and talk about how heirs property intersects with Kwanzaa principles. So, as I mentioned, today's principle is Ujamaa. Ujamaa stands for Cooperative Economics. To build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. Again, heirs property fits right in there with this principle. When I work with families who have inherited heirs property, I encourage them as quickly as possible to begin to see their family property ownership endeavor as a business, to see it as a way to increase the family's wealth, to bring in additional income, and to allow the family to have opportunities to generate additional wealth. So, the way that this often happens is that the family will come together and decide upon one or more income streams that they would like to bring into that they would like to use the family property to generate. So they'll say, okay, we're going to maybe sell the timber from the family property. And so we will help them to work together to create some kind of a structure where they can own the family property in a better structure than having all these family members own a small fractional interest. Instead, we would have it where we might create a family LLC or a family corporation or a family partnership and allow that to be the vehicle that owns the family property. And from there, the family can work together to bring in revenue using that property. So they might say, we want to grow and manage timber on our property. A lot of times, families who own heirs property they already have. If it's like rural land that has not been used in a while, they might already have some timber on that property. And so from there, the family might say, let's sell the timber and get whatever amount of money we can get from selling the timber. Then we're going to set aside a portion of that revenue for replanting because we want to make sure we still have some to continue to increase this investment. And then we might set aside another portion to, create a little nest egg for paying taxes. And then we might distribute the rest of the money between the family members so that we all get some kind of I guess, a return on our investment. So that's one strategy. Or maybe the family might say, we want to use the money that we receive from this timber sale to purchase the interest of family members who are not interested in moving forward in this endeavor. So I forgot to mention you want to set aside some money for legal fees because all of these things are going to require the involvement of a lawyer to help you to do things in a proper way. So you want to set aside money for legal fees, money to replant if that's what you want to do, money to do whatever it is that you need to do to maintain the property, to protect the property. But then whatever else you have, you might decide, let's buy out family members who do not want to continue in this family property endeavor. So then what you're doing moving forward is working with family members who actually want to be part of the family property. And then you can start working on that cooperative economics where together we're coming together as a family in order to create revenue streams that we all can benefit from. So if you are just tuning in, my name is attorney Veronica McClendon. My name is Veronica McClendon. I'm an attorney in Macon, Georgia, and I work with families on heirs property. This is my channel. I encourage you to please like this stream. If you are tuned in, please like. And also, if you are not subscribed, please be sure to subscribe so that you can receive updates. I'm covering a principle of Kwanzaa each day of Kwanzaa. So December 26th through January the 1st, I am doing a different session each day where we will talk about one of the Kwanzaa principles and how it intersects with heirs property. I invite y'all, strongly encourage y'all to please put questions in the chat. If you have a question related to what I'm talking about today with cooperative economics and the context of heirs property, feel free to put that in the chat. Feel free to ask a question about heirs property in general, even if it's not something directly related to what I'm talking about today. And also, if you just want to share a story, perhaps you have an example in your own family of how you applied cooperative economics with your family heirs property. I would love to hear that as well so we can talk about it because that is going to help us all learn from each other. So I thank y'all so much for liking this video. And I hope that it is very valuable for you. And the way that we can make sure that you get the most value from this is if you let me know in the chat what questions you have, what things you want to talk about. That's how I can make sure that I provide you what you came here looking for today. And some of you may just come because you like to see me just riff and be random, and we can do that too. Because I'm just glad to be here with y'all on this beautiful, cool morning. It's like maybe the first day of winter for Georgia because it's been kind of warm. It's been like summer temperatures, at least spring temperatures. We won't be too crazy because it ain't been in the 90s and the hundreds, but it's been in the 70s for the past week or so, and we finally, I guess, starting to get to some cooler weather for a little bit at least. So, as I mentioned, we are talking about cooperative economics, the Kwanzaa principle of Ujamaa. We are talking about building and maintaining our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. And that's the purpose of heirs property. Once you get down to it, is to create ways that we can improve our economic situation as a family, in a way that we all benefit. That whole concept of a rising tide lifts all boats. When we elevate the use of our family heirs property, then we can elevate everybody's financial position in the family. And that's the goal. It's not so that one person will profit and others will lose out, but it's so that we can continue to have a shared legacy as a family and actually maximize what we have with our family property. And I do understand that some families have a family house, some families have family land, some families' land is going to be, maybe an acre or two, or other families may have 200 acres. Every family is going to be different in terms of what they've actually inherited and what they have access to use as a family. So, with that in mind, everybody is going to come up with a different way of generating income with their family property or helping the different family members to create wealth to benefit from this family investment structure. Another thing that I want to point out with heirs property is that it could be a starting point. So you may have just a family house, and you might say, let's create a family LLC where we will put this family house into the LLC. We will have each of the family members to be a member of the LLC. We will come together and manage this LLC together. And as we rent out our family home, we might decide instead of us having family members live in a home, we might bring in a tenant, and that tenant will pay us a rent every month, and that money will be used to pay the expenses of the property, make sure that the insurance is paid, make sure that if there are any repairs that need to be done, that money will be used for that purpose. And then the rest of the money could be used for investment in other properties. Or you might decide that we're going to invest in the stock market, or we're going to invest in some kind of, maybe EFTs, or is it EFTs or ETFs, electronic, y'all help me. I think it's ETFs, not EFT. I think, yeah, not EFT, ETFs. We might decide we want to invest our remaining residuals into something like ETFs or stocks or whatever it might be. I am not an investment person. I am a lawyer, and I have a lot of ideas that I got from other people. So you all have to decide what's going to be best for you and your family. But I encourage you to see your family's heirs property as a starting point. So you might say, I'm going to take this family property, we're going to maximize this, and then we're going to acquire additional properties. You might say, the house next door, we can buy that from another family who they have heirs property, but they don't have the desire to continue to maintain their property. So we might say, hey, let us buy your property from you and add it to our pot. And then now we have two properties in our family LLC. And it might not be that you only have your inherited property, but you're acquiring additional properties and adding to what you already had. And it may not be the property next door. It may be a property that's in, your family started out in, let's say, Macon, Georgia, but then somebody moves to Atlanta. You might buy a property in Atlanta and add it to the family LLC. And now, instead of us having one property, which our grandfather may have left to us, now we have that property from grandfather, and we also have a property that we have acquired in another way. Maybe we bought it from the land bank, or maybe we got it from a family who was looking to sell. Maybe we bought it from another nonprofit that was rehabbing homes and selling them back to people. Whatever it is that you might have done, you now have taken your family property, which is like your nest egg, and you've acquired additional property. And now you can continue to manage those properties together as a family and bring in additional revenue. And it just keeps going. I would say to bring on the family members who may have some financial savvy, who understand investments or understand real estate investing, have them to manage certain aspects of the family LLC so that you have someone with the expertise who is managing this endeavor. And I'm just throwing out ideas, like just whatever is coming to mind. I'm just throwing out ideas. This may not be something that your family wants to do, but it's just an idea on how you can apply the principles of cooperative economics to help your family with um, I guess this improving everybody's financial situation. Some families will say we are going to have this family property in our LLC, but we're also going to set up some other revenue streams. Maybe we say, and I don't, and this is something you got to talk to your tax person about, your financial person. But I know of families who will have a family trust, and that trust might own the interest in the LLC, but it also can be there for like family members. You might say, everybody in the family, we want y'all to get a life insurance policy for yourself. Name the trust as either the full beneficiary or even like a partial beneficiary. You might say part of the beneficiaries will be your children or your spouse, and then the other beneficiary will be this trust or this LLC, however you set it up, talking with your tax professional. Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in for all of you. And I do see a question in the chat that I'm going to mention. I'm going to answer that question in a moment. But you might decide that, hey, we want everybody in the family to get a life insurance policy, name this trust, this family trust as the beneficiary, and that's going to provide additional money that we can use to help the family. If someone starts a business and they want to borrow money from the family trust, we'll have a process and a procedure in place to help them to access that money and make sure they pay it back. Assuming that their business is successful, you can set things up so that this family property is the beginning, but it doesn't have to be the end. It does not have to be the only thing. It's like once you start thinking as a family from a cooperative economics perspective, then the possibilities are just like endless. Because then you can say, well, let's try this, let's try that. Since we're already doing business together, since we're already managing this property together, let's try something different and just have fun with it and see what you and your family can create. So I see here that Tracy said, how can a person go about if someone is farming on the land but they're not paying to use it? So that's something that there are a lot of different ways that you can approach that kind of situation. I always encourage people I'm working with, please, if you can, try to work things out with your family so that y'all are not at odds with each other, but you're actually working together on um on different things. And I see that Sha said he has so many questions. Hey, ask your questions. I'm happy to answer them if I can. If I can't, I will let you know. So feel free to ask some of your questions. Excuse me. I do encourage you though, do not put any family details in here. Don't say your grandparents' name. Don't say where your property is located. I want you to keep it anonymous so that we don't know all your business. But feel free to list any questions that you might have in the chat. And then if I have time to get to them or if I know the answer, I will do my best to get to them. So, going back to the family member who is farming the land, but they're not paying to use it. Um, this is something like, again, every family is different. You have to know your family. You have to know how you operate. Some families will have a family council of some sort built in. Some families have elders who kind of have a level of influence on other family members, and then they're saying it's not the family who is doing it, it's someone else. Okay, so that's another issue. Because if you got family who, and a lot of times we do have with heirs property, you have a family member who they just farm the land and they've been farming it all along, and they just do it without paying. Um, but in that case, I would say try to work as a family to get that person to pay something, or at least provide a portion of whatever it is that they're bringing in to pay to pay back the rest of the family. But someone outside the family, I would say definitely, even with the first situation, if it's a family member, you do want to talk with an attorney one on one about it, because there are a lot of different things that could be going on if it has not been too long, and too long is going to vary from state to state. But if it has not been too long, then you might be able to have them ejected from the property, which is a actual legal process that's used to get someone out of your property who does not have the legal right to be there. A lot of times, which is unfortunate in these family cases, the person who is there might be there with the permission of a family member. And so, in that case, an ejectment proceeding might not be the best bet. You might have to do something else. And that might be a little more of a formal process, because that person might have some right to be there because someone gave them permission to be there. Then the other situation you might have is someone just went on the family property and they were like, I don't see anybody here who gonna check me. Like nobody's here that's gonna stop me from doing this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and farm. And the concern there is that if they've done it for a certain period of time, it could become an adverse possession type situation where they are there, they don't have anybody's permission, but what they've been doing has been so, what we say in adverse possession law is it's open, notorious, it is without permission, it is um, in a way that it looks like they're the owner, but they're not. And then if it's happened for a certain period of time, here in Georgia, it could be 7 years or it could be 20 years, depending on what exactly is going on. Um, and in that case, you really need to be careful how you go about things, because if you're too aggressive, then that kind of reinforces that without permission type thing with adverse possession. And if they say, you know what, y'all have not done anything about this for 20 years. And so now y'all coming here and trying to kick me off this land. I'm going to fight back and say, this is my land now. So I think the main thing that I'm saying here is that these situations are so case specific. I really encourage you to talk to a lawyer licensed in your state to make sure that the process that you take is going to be in line with what is going to protect your family's interests. Because a lot of times, families, especially when it's heirs property, nobody's looking at the property, nobody's visiting it, nobody is tending to it, and they don't know what happened with the property. They just know it's there. A lot of times, they just paying the taxes because the tax bill still comes. I had a family I worked with before who was paying taxes on property that what didn't really even exist. There was this little piece of property that their family owned. They owned a lot of property, but the family divided it up into little sections. And there was one section that a family was still owning and paying taxes to. At some point, and this is not an accurate description, but generally what happened, um, somebody who owned that little piece, they ended up selling it to somebody else. But for some reason, the other half of the family didn't become aware of it, and it kind of like slid under the radar of the tax office. So the tax office was still sending them a bill for this little piece of land, but the property had been deeded to someone outside the family like years ago. So they're basically paying taxes for decades on property that didn't really exist because it had already been like absorbed into this larger parcel. So it's really important that families know what's going on with their property. Don't just, ooh, I'm about to hit myself with this light. Don't just pay the taxes every year, but actually go visit the property. Make sure that there's nobody squatting on the property, nobody using the property without the family's permission, because that could cause some major issues. So I hope that kind of answers your question. There are different things that you might need to do depending on who is farming it, how they ended up farming it. Did someone get them permission? Who gave them permission? All those different things. How long has it been? All of those factors are going to be coming into consideration to see what is going to be the course of action that you can take. So another question says, I am new. I inherited my parents' house. I like the LLC idea with my daughter. I think it's a good idea. The thing that I do caution about with an LLC, if it's going to be your property that you're living in, then you might disqualify yourself from homestead tax exemptions, and also like any senior tax exemptions that you may be receiving if it's your home. So you want to be careful about putting it into an LLC if you're living there. But if it's just a property that you got and you already have your own home and you just looking, how can I utilize this property? You might consider putting it into an LLC and renting it out. The good thing about putting your property in an LLC is that it separates that property from you as an individual. So, like I mentioned, with your home, you want to keep that in your name. Or if you create a trust for estate planning purposes, you could put it in your trust and have, as long as the trust is set up a certain way. You need to talk to your lawyer about how to set up the trust the right way. But if you set up your trust a certain way, you can put your home property in there and still receive your tax benefits, your tax exemptions, and your homestead exemptions, things like that. But if it's property that's not your home, you can put it into an LLC and then separate that property from you as an individual. And that helps protect you from liabilities that may occur from the property. So let's say that there's mold in the house and your tenant gets sick, and then they're saying that they're going to sue you because they got sick and they had to go to the hospital and pay these expensive bills and miss work, and now they sad and all the different things. Um, your personal assets will be protected from what happens with property that's inside the LLC, as long as you manage those things properly. So you want to make sure you have a solid operating agreement that you follow, that you don't commingle money between your personal money and the LLC money. There's a lot of stuff you want to do to protect yourself, but generally speaking, that's a great way to separate liability between you personally and your property within that LLC. And it's a good way to own property with other people, so that if something happened to one of you, like if you became disabled or one of you passed away, the property is not going to become shared ownership with your heirs. Or if you get sued, then the property is not going to be lost because your creditor is coming after the property. It would be in that LLC and then protected from these outside forces. So I think it's a great idea, owning LLC, owning the house that you've inherited in the LLC with family members, and that way it is separate from you as an individual. And so we have a question that says, someone inherits undivided family land along with others. One of the members lose their share to a loan. Another member buys it back after it was forfeited. Is it now marital property? So the whole question of marital property is going to be state specific. Um, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, marital property here in Georgia only comes about when you are in the context of a divorce, and you are separating out the marital assets. When it comes to a death, then it's not about is it marital property or is it not marital property, but it's about who are your heirs at the time of your death. So that's something, it's a common misconception. A lot of lawyers get it confused because it's like when someone is getting divorced, then the court is saying, how do we separate out the marital assets? There's going to be separate assets and then there's going to be marital assets. And so if someone were to buy property, buying someone's interest in property during the marriage, and this is outside of my expertise because I'm not a family lawyer. I just do probate. So I'm kind of stepping out and putting my toe out there, but y'all don't hold me accountable for my toe being out there because I'm not a family lawyer. That's my disclaimer. But from what I understand from law school and maybe a little bit after being a lawyer, the property that you acquired during the marriage would be considered marital property. If it's something that you've inherited, that's going to be separate. But if you actually purchase the property using marital money, then that interest would be probably marital property. But again, this is like all fact dependent because it could be that you use money that your mother left you after she died to buy this interest, and then you kept it separate from your spouse in so many ways. Then it may not be marital property. So it really depends on what's going on. If y'all have been on any of my past live streams, first of all, say what's up. Say I've been here. This I'm not new to this channel. I've been here before. I would love to hear that. But if you are new to my channel, then you may not know that I always tell you that any question you ask me really is going to depend, because there's always some kind of factual loophole that might change the answer. That if I don't know all the facts, then I wouldn't know what the answer to the question would be. But I try to give general guidance about what probably will happen, and more likely try to tell you things to consider that may impact the question, the way that I answer the question, or that may impact the recommendation that I would give. So I hope that answered that question. I do appreciate y'all for being engaged in the comments and asking questions, because it helps me to make sure that I'm talking about stuff y'all care about. If y'all are quiet, then I'm just talking and I could just be rambling off into the air about things that don't help you, are not relevant to you. And I also want to say, if you just logged in, if you would not mind, please hit that like button. It helps other people to find my channel. I also ask that if you have not subscribed to this channel, that you subscribe. I will be putting out more content, and I would love for you to be informed when that happens. So make sure you like this video, subscribe, and if you know somebody who needs to know this information, I encourage you to share this link with them. So to that question, it says the children are meant to be the heirs, but won't they now have to share it with the spouse? It was separate until it was lost to an unpaid loan. Um, it's hard for me to really know exactly how to answer this question, because there could be a lot of things that are going on that would impact how this happens. But what I will say is, if someone owns property at the time of their death, if they have a will or a trust, they get to say who gets that property and where it goes. If they do not have a will or trust, state law is going to determine what happens to that property. And here in the state of Georgia, when someone dies without a will, whatever property they own, however they got it, whether they bought it, someone gave it to them, they inherited it, they won the lottery, whatever it is, their job paid for it, whatever it is, however they got that property in their name. If they do not have a will or a trust at the time of their death, then here in the state of Georgia, if they're married, if they have children, marry and have children, the spouse gets at least one third of whatever it is, and the children split the rest of the property. So if there's one spouse and one child, spouse gets 50%, child gets 50%. If there's one spouse and two children, spouse gets one third, children get the two-thirds to share. And however many children you have, if you have 100 kids, spouse gets one third, the two-thirds is going to be split between the 100 children. And that's children who are born in the marriage. There's children who are born outside the marriage, who are born before the marriage, who are born after the marriage, who are born during the marriage, but not in the marriage. Whatever it is, if they're your child, then they will share in that two-thirds. Again, it could be inherited property. It could be property you bought with your separate money. It could be property you bought with your joint money. It doesn't matter. They're going to look at what property is in your name at the time of your death, and they're going to look at who your heirs at law are. And if you don't want it to be that way, if you don't want your spouse to have to own your one-fourth interest in your daddy's land, along with your children from your first marriage and your children from your second marriage, if you don't want that to happen, you have to have a will or a trust that changes that. So if you inherit a one-fourth interest in your family property and you want it to go to your children, you need to create a will, you need to create a trust that says my one-fourth interest in this particular property goes to these people. Because if you don't, state law is going to control. And state law doesn't care where you got that property from, how much sentimental value your family has attached to it, or anything. State law is going to say, do you have a spouse? Do you have children? Your spouse gets at least a third, your children split the rest. That's it, period. In other states it's different. There are some states where they'll take half of the property, and they're not gonna say, well, we're gonna put the house over here and we're gonna put the family land over here. It's gonna be everything going one pot and we're gonna split that pot. Half of that pot is going to go to your surviving spouse. The other half of the pot goes to your parents. And if you don't have parents, it goes to your brothers and sisters. So they're going to take that property, that family house, the family land, your bank accounts, your car, all of that stuff is just going to be split into two separate shares equally. And then they got to own this property together. And we don't, most people don't want that to happen. So the way that you change it is by creating a will, creating a trust. A lot of people ask, if I have inherited an interest in heirs property, should I take my interest in the heirs property and address it in my will? The answer to that question is a resounding yes. Please make sure that you address your family's heirs property in your will or in your trust. Because even if you only own like 1% interest in that property. You can take your 1% and say it's going to go to this person. That way, when we are working to clean up the title to that family property, we know that Jack Doe's property, his 1% interest is going to his daughter Susie, instead of it going to his wife and all of his children and it being real confusing. So if you own any interest in heirs property, I strongly encourage you to address that specifically in your estate plan. I want you to say, I have inherited a 1/10 interest in my property that I inherited from my mother that's located in Jones County, Georgia at 123 Happy Lane. I want that 1/10 of an interest to go to my daughter Susie. And you can say it in lawyer language. You get your lawyer to put it in lawyer language, but I want it to be that specific because when I'm looking at this stuff, I don't like when people don't address their heirs property in their will or their trust because sometimes it's hard to know if they even knew that they had it. And then it just kind of throws a monkey wrench in the equation. So I actually, my most popular YouTube video, my most popular ever is, I think it's close to 100,000 views. If I can get it, I'll put it in the chat in a minute. Or somebody else can do it if they know where it is. It's called like "Shot Them Most Shot That More Heirs Property Owners Aren't Doing This." That's my number one video. I don't know what happened with it, but people loved it. That video, I said, I cannot understand why people do not put their heirs property in their will or in their trust. And the situation I talked about there was where there was a family whose their father or grandfather owned an interest in this heir's property. He didn't mention it in his will. They had moved up north. Family's located in Georgia. This family had moved up north. He had assets in the state that he lived in up north, but they didn't know he actually owned a significant portion of heirs property in Georgia. And eventually they found out, but if it was in his will, then it would have helped so much. And he knew he owned it. His name was on the deed. He knew he owned part of it, but for whatever reason, he didn't put it in his will. A lot of times people just focus on the property that they own by themselves and they don't think about that family property, but that needs to be put in your will or put in your trust because then we can keep track of it all. So you want to name all of your property in your estate plan if you can, because that will help us to know where you want particular things to go. So that's just my little tidbit there about estate planning and heirs property and making sure that you address your family's heirs property in your estate plan. So again, for those of you who may have just joined, I encourage you to leave questions in the chat, and that will give me stuff to talk about that's relevant to y'all. What I have been talking about, what this whole session is about, is this is my heirs property talk, and it's the Kwanzaa edition, Kwanzaa 2025. I really like this, so maybe I'll do it every year. But each day of Kwanzaa has a different principle that goes with it. And I have been going through each principle of Kwanzaa since the second day of Kwanzaa. I might have to go back and do the first principle because I had the idea on day one. And so I didn't do a video that day. But each day from there, I have been covering a different principle of Kwanzaa. And today's principle is Ujamaa. Ujamaa stands for Cooperative Economics, and it means to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. And I talked about how Heirs property is the perfect opportunity for families to practice cooperative economics because you already own this property jointly. So we might as well work together, collective work and responsibility, which is what we talked about yesterday. We might as well work together to make this asset make money for us, to help it to be a source of wealth for us. So, talking about Ujamaa, cooperative economics, we're building and maintaining our own stores, shops, and other businesses. If you own heirs property, you can do that on your property. I am in Macon, and we have a community called Pleasant Hill. So if you're in Macon, I know you know about Pleasant Hill. Little Richard was raised in Pleasant Hill. Lots of prominent people from Macon, particularly prominent African American people from Macon, grew up in Pleasant Hill. And it's right now it's like developing very quickly. Well, I don't know if I could say that, but there are a lot of people who are buying these family homes from Pleasant Hill, and they are either rehabbing the homes or building new homes on it and selling them for like hundred and something thousand dollars. Which if you're in the city of Atlanta or New York or something, that's pennies, but in Macon, that's a decent size. That's a decently valued house. And so they're putting these houses in Pleasant Hill for these higher amounts. And of course, it changes the community in a way. But the families who own those properties, I just wish that more of them could have foreseen where this is going. And there are some that do. I have some clients who actually have gotten their family properties in Pleasant Hill. They're working on getting the ownership cleaned up, the heirs property situation cleaned up, so that they can now invest in those properties, maintain, get them repaired, get them rehabbed, and actually make it an income source for their family. As this community continues to grow and develop, they actually get to participate and benefit from that. Instead of it being like, oh, gentrification is causing all these issues, it's like they are part of the redevelopment process. They get to maintain their family properties here. They also get to maintain their like that community identity because more families are holding on to their family property and actually investing in the community. So that's the kind of stuff that I believe cooperative economics teaches us. This principle of Kwanzaa teaches us is that when we have this shared property, we actually can use it to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses. There was a building in Pleasant Hill, and I'm speaking a little bit outside of my realm of knowledge. So if I'm just totally wrong, y'all can tell me. But what I understand is that there was a few stores that um, people owned in Pleasant Hill. There were black owned stores that were there to serve the community because it was a black community. This was during the times of segregation. So this was a very prominent African American community in Macon. And part of their ability to prosper was because they had people of all economic backgrounds in this community because black people could only live in one place or a select few places in Macon. So there were some business owners, some store owners. I remember there was like a black hospital and all these different places. And so I imagine that somebody who maybe their family inherited a store, they could put a new store there and they can put something there that actually represents the cultural identity of the community and helps to support that moving forward. So some families have inherited land, some have inherited houses, but some have inherited commercial buildings. And so you can use those commercial buildings to continue to add to the family wealth by putting stores in their shops, other businesses, and then allow it to be a family endeavor. Like, I would love if my family owned a law firm, or let me not say that, if they own a building that I could then go into and rent a space there for my law firm. And it will be money that I'm putting back into the family pot instead of me paying just a random landlord. I could be paying my family to be in that building. And that family building, I would be able to be a part of my family heritage, my family identity, but then also the money is going back to me and my family instead of it just going outside of the family. So, bringing in those principles of cooperative economics. Another way that this could come up in heirs property, particularly when there are family members who are farming the land. Maybe you're not a farmer, but your cousin Joe is a farmer and he actually farms on the family land. Maybe the family can come together and invest in Joe to say, "Hey, Joe, we're going to to loan you this particular amount of money, or we're going to sow this seed into your farm. What we ask of you is that as your farm grows, that you pour some of your profit back into the family entity, or maybe that you give us some, like we get to get vegetables from you, we get to get fruit from you, but we're all working together to help Joe's farm to succeed, but we also get to benefit from that." So it's just about being creative and coming up with with ways that your family can engage in cooperative economics together, using that family property as an anchor, as the foundation, as the starting point for this family economic venture. So I'm just like out here giving ideas. It's for me, like this is free game. Y'all can take it or y'all can leave it. But I'm just putting out stuff because I want to see it happen. I want to see families creating neighborhoods where they're basically taking a portion of their family land, building houses on it, and either renting the houses out to family members or selling the houses to family members. You could create a land trust type situation where the family owns the land and then they sell they allow family members to lease out that plot of land and build a house on it. So it might be like a 99-year lease that they can have where they put their house on it. They own the house, but the family owns the land. This is something that community land trusts use, where they actually will have a nonprofit that buys the land, and that nonprofit will say, "Hey, you can come here. We'll let you." What they often do is for affordable housing, they'll have a family who has a house, and they say, "Hey, we'll buy that house," or they have a person who owns a house. They'll buy that house with the land underneath it, and then someone else will come in and they will. Um, Allow them to lease the land under the house for a nominal rate, but then they actually will buy the house. So let's say that you have a residential neighborhood. You go in there and you say, "Oh, I see this house. It's $150,000. It's listed for $150,000." If that house was instead owned by a land trust, instead of you paying the full $150,000, you might pay 100,000 for the house, and the land, which is worth 50,000, would not have to be part of that purchase. You would buy the house that's sitting on top of the land, but then the land underneath is still owned by the nonprofit, and they basically would allow you to lease for a nominal amount to keep your house there that you own. And so families, I think, can adopt the same model where they're basically like, "We're going to own this land as a family, but we're going to sell the individual houses on top of the land to family members for, they own the house, but the land is still the family land." And so there's just so many different opportunities that you can have from there to maintain this family ownership, but then the individuals can still have some ownership of their own in the actual structure. Of course, that's a lot of lawyer work because you got to put those agreements and documentation in place, so that it's going to be sound. But that's just something that throwing out there, that your family might consider. So I am thinking I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. But if there are any lingering questions or comments, anybody have a story to share, or just say, "This was helpful, I want more of this," like whatever it is that is on your mind, let me know in the chat because that's gonna help me to know if I should keep doing this beyond the Kwanzaa season. I probably won't do it every day, but more regular live streams. If there's any topics that you think would be helpful to you, put those in the chat. I also ask that for those of you who might be tuning in later, put them in the comments because that's going to help me to know. Because I do read all the comments, I be in the comments all the time, and I try to respond to them. So put them in the comments, and I will, answer questions as I see them. I'll do videos on things that people may ask questions about. But I also do ask that each of you who has tuned in that you please like this video. Just hit like. It's gonna help other people to find it. If you want to hype the video, you can hype it. Donate some of your hype points to the video. That'll help to elevate it to other people. Sharing it with others. Subscribe. Anything you can do to support the channel, I would really appreciate that, so that other people can get access to this information, and it'll help me to know like what's helpful to y'all. So please let me know in the comments. I see someone says, what happens if the house gets foreclosed on? Those are the types of things that you're gonna put in your documentation. So I'm assuming you're talking about this land trust situation that I was proposing. So I would say that if you created this kind of situation and the house gets foreclosed on, this might be something where if the property is going into foreclosure, that there will be some provisions in place for how the family as a whole would acquire that property. I would say that is actually a very good question that I would need to think about, but it is something um, that has been thought about before. So it's a matter of doing the research. I was just throwing out that idea, but it is a matter of doing the research to plan for those type situations. But those are the exact kind of questions that would be addressed in the documentation that the parties are signing, so that it's clear. This is what happens if a foreclosure happens. If a bank ends up in possession of your property, this is what needs to happen. And some people might even say that if I don't know. I'm not gonna try to guess anymore, but that is a good question. But it is something that would be addressed in the documentation. Um, I have not done one of these myself before, but it's just been an idea I have been kind of rolling around in my head. So I probably will end up asking some of my colleagues who do run land trusts to see how they handle those situations. But that is a very good question. I appreciate you for asking that, so I can make sure that I research it. Um, but yeah, so thank you so much for all of you being so engaged in this conversation. Like I said, share it with a friend and be sure you join me tomorrow. I'll be talking about what will we be talking about? The fifth principle of Kwanzaa. I think it's Nia. Let me see if I'm right about that. Yes, Nia. Nia stands for purpose. So we will talk about purpose in the context of heirs property. Y'all help me out. I don't know what I'm gonna say, but I haven't known what I was gonna talk about with any of these conversations. That the ideas just kind of come as y'all get on here and engage with me. It gives me more things to talk about. So if you have thoughts about how heirs property intersects with purpose, so purpose is to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. So I think I can work with that. I think I can think about some ways that we'll incorporate that with Aries property. But I definitely welcome y'all to share any ideas that you may have. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and end this live stream. Some of y'all may be getting to lunch, so I will let y'all go. Y'all have a great one. Happy Kwanzaa, joyous Kwanzaa. Enjoy this beautiful day. If you're off from work, enjoy your time away. Get some rest, refresh. I know I'm excited and looking forward to planning for the new year. Let's make it an amazing year, y'all. Y'all take care. Bye.